So this speaks to the trends, and you can see, you know, the only state that is below 20% now is Colorado, which is just, it's unbelievable. And the trends, looking at the future, now here is childhood obesity. And in childhood obesity, has more than tripled in the last 30 years. So it's not only adults, obviously, it's happening earlier and earlier. And adolescents now have increased from 5 to 18% for age groups 12 to 19. So that defines the need. Now let's talk about the impact. So here's some of the comorbidities that are associated with obesity. So on the left side here, you know, diabetes, heart disease, osteoarthritis, and you can see that like type 2 diabetes has gone from 2% now to almost 15% as you increase in weight. So the correlation obviously between weight and other comorbidity risk factors is high, and then hypertension is clearly just off the charts as you start to you increase in weight. So again, that defines the need. So the opportunity. Now this next slide used to be, I use this as it used to be a shock factor slide, but now people say, well, $1 trillion is nothing. We talk about them all the time, right? So this is from Credit Suisse back in 2008, and it speaks to the direct and indirect market opportunities. So getting smaller is big business. So if you look at all of the things that where people spend money on losing weight and their health associated with weight, and that includes diet and healthy for you foods, things that are low fat. So there's a lot of things that are associated with trying to be healthier and lose weight. That's $727 billion. And interestingly, when you think about what is being done in even pharmaceuticals, where it shows $52 billion, that's all of the ancillary drugs associated with comorbidities. It's not the drugs that are associated with obesity. They are, I think, more close to about the $1 billion range in total. So, and surgery and devices today, in total, or back in 2008, was about $1 billion of this. So there's, for those of us that are involved in obesity today, in the healthcare system, there's this big concern about, well, if we start to reimburse, we start to support obesity, it's going to break the bank. Well, the reality is if we don't do something, we don't intervene, it's going to break the bank because of all of the other costs associated with obesity. So a little bit more about devices and procedure-based evolution. So I included surgery in here as well. So back in the early 60s, the gastric bypass, the open gastric bypass, Roux-en-Y, was developed. And then there wasn't a whole lot that came along, and then in the mid-80s there was a device that ultimately was acquired for a brief time by Edwards Life Sciences called the Garrett Edwards Bubble. It had some quality and side effect problems and was pulled from the market, but when it was on the market for its brief time, there was a huge demand for it. In the 90s, there started to be minimally invasive techniques for surgery, laparoscopic techniques. So some of the complications went down, the procedure was simplified, and so the popularity of the procedure started to increase. Gastric banding started to become available in the early 2000s. Some of the bariatric centers started to create centers of excellence a little later on to try to drive some quality and outcomes related metrics, because it recognized to get reimbursement and other things there needed to be quality metrics in terms of outcomes. Both ourselves and Allergan have started balloon trials here in the last year. And then going forward, there's a number of other techniques that are being pursued. You have Bernardino here, Ahmed mentioned Valentex, so you got space occupation, flow control, gastric sleeves that limit the absorption of nutrients, and then appetite suppression. So this is some data here from ASMBS, which is the Surgical Society of the Bariatric Surgeons, that speaks to the number of procedures. Overall, from the year 2002 till today, it's a compound growth rate of 21%. And what you can see is a mix shift here, going from the surgical procedures, the dark blue, has actually started to decline, and the banding procedures has obviously started to increase. And anybody in LA that drives sees billboards promoting band procedures. And then sleeve gastrectomies are starting to become a more prevalent, a less dramatic surgical approach than Roux-en-Y. But overall, in total, you're still roughly around estimated 250,000 procedures in the U.S., which is, as a percentage of the total indicated population, is still an extremely small percentage. So Ahmed kind of touched on this, but in the U.S. today, if you look at it, the surgical procedures are a subset of the class 2 obese patients and the class 3 obese patients. So you have over 75% of the overweight and obese patients. And this is the adults 18 to 64. 125 million people, roughly, adults in the U.S. are overweight or obese. And 75% of those have no procedure-based options. So it's diet, exercise, or drugs, basically, are their only options for interventions today. So if you look at it from an unmet need from risk-benefit analysis, so this is a nice consultant 2x2 chart here. You have efficacy on one axis and risk on the other. Diet and exercise, obviously anybody can do that, and the data from CDC shows that as a society right now, that has not been effective. Obviously on an individual basis, it can be, but in a global sense, it has not been. Drugs are nominally more effective, and then you have the invasive surgical procedures. Obviously the most invasive with the most dramatic weight loss is the Roux-en-Y procedure, and then the banding procedures, but you have more risk, and there is a big reluctance by a significant part of the population to have a surgery for this kind of procedure. So there is the unmet need, and this is why there is so much investment going on in this space and the opportunity. So if you talk to any of the large strategic companies, and Baxter is probably one of them, obesity is listed in the strategic framework of companies that say this is a growth opportunity with an unmet need, big market. So if you have a big market with an unmet need, if you can find a good solution that has a business model that works, you've got a home run. So that's the investment thesis behind it. Oops, that's not going to change the slide. So just briefly, since I'm from Reshape Medical, I thought I ought to at least speak a little bit about our product today. So our product is a space-filling device. It takes up space in the stomach. It's endoscopically placed, non-surgically, so I'll speak to that in a minute. But this is the catheter that it's attached to. We have two balloons. It's placed in your stomach, and then when it's inflated, it basically looks like this. And so the way the procedure happens is you go into the stomach with an endoscope first, under just like any other endoscopy. So you'd be under conscious sedation. The physician looks around to make sure that there's no abnormalities, and then the device is placed, and then it's inflated and then disengaged. And after that occurs, the approach is that we've taken up space in your stomach. You'll feel full faster. We don't alter your anatomy. And after 6 months, the device is removed. And it's important that you have a behavior modification, diet, exercise program that goes along with this kind of procedure to ensure you have long-term success. As Ahmed mentioned, we started our U.S. clinical study last month, just a little over a month ago now, and there has been significant demand. Our challenge is not to find patients. Our challenge is to find the right patients that are committed, because any of these procedures, one of the things that is clear with obesity is you have to be ready for a lifestyle change. Even with a gastric bypass, if you do not have the mental preparation for the changes in your life that are required, it's going to be a problem. You can hurt yourself with a gastric bypass if you don't change your behavior. So it's an important part that we have for any of these trials, that screening is an important part of identifying the patients and making sure that you're ready for the lifestyle changes. And as I mentioned earlier, we have over 100 clinical experiences outside the U.S.